Uh, Good morning, students. Today's guest is Mr. Anand. He's the CEO for Gramener, a data science company. He's recognized as one of India's top 10 data scientists. He leads a team that conveys insights as powerful data stories. Anand is a gold medalist from IIM Bangalore and an alumnus of IIT Madras, London Business School, IBM, Infosys, Lehman Brothers, and BCG. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks a lot, Hitesh.
Sir, this is basically a podcast series aimed at MBA students. So we will look at a few questions that my students have with regards to their career. So the first question that students have is that what work ethics are very important for a student to succeed in their career?
I remember reading a book
Yep.
by Charlie Munger
Yes,
called
sir.
Poor Charlie's Almanac.
Oh, yes. Yes.
It's a brilliant piece, and one
Yeah.
of the chapters there is a
Yeah.
lecture that he gives to his alma mater.
Yes, sir.
And he turns the tables around remarkably. He says, I'm not going to tell you what it takes to succeed, I'm going to tell you what it takes to fail.
Okay.
And if you follow these, then you are pretty much guaranteed failure. Now, the
Okay.
interesting thing is
Yep.
that it's very easy to flip this around and say this is what you have to avoid doing
Yep. Yep.
in order to succeed.
Yep.
The one thing that he says more than anything else that you have to do if you want to fail is
Yep.
be unreliable.
Okay.
Promise
Okay.
something and
Yeah.
do not deliver it when it was committed, the way
Yep.
it was committed.
Okay.
And that one thing is no matter what else you manage to do or not do, this
Yep.
will guarantee you failure.
Okay.
Which, if you flip around, it
Yep.
almost becomes like I don't even have to do much to increase my
Yep.
chances of success. I just have to stop doing one thing,
Yep.
which is being unreliable.
Yep.
Now, arguably, that's a simple thing, but
Yep.
not an easy thing to do.
Yep. Yep.
But I don't think I can do better than Charlie Munger in saying
Yep.
that doing what you've committed to do, the way
Yep.
in which it was intended,
Yep.
is easily the most important thing.
Okay. Okay. So being predictable in your output, in your work, is the first thing that you, or most important thing for a student.
Predictability is where somebody else can guess what you will do, and
Yep.
there is a lot of value in that.
Yep.
Reliability is about doing what you say, even if it
Yep.
is not what the other person thought you might say.
Okay. Very good. That's an interesting insight. Really interesting insight. Thank you. Okay. Sir, the next question I have is about work-life balance. Um, because few of my students are millennials, so they have a different take on life than our generation. So what they tell me is that, sir, it's better to work smart and rather than work hard. And they believe that work life balance should be something that should be embraced by all. So what is your opinion about that, sir?
We run a survey on a regular basis to
Yep.
understand what people feel about work life balance
Yep.
and have followed that through with a lot of interviews with individuals.
Yep.
One thing was surprising, the
Yep.
correlation between
Yep.
the number of hours worked and
Yep.
the perception of work life
Yep.
balance
Yep.
is pretty close to zero,
Oh, okay. Okay.
which makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And what our interviews revealed was a strange thing.
Yep.
Uh, what people talk about when they say work life balance is not the number of hours, it's how much they enjoy the hours.
Oh.
One of my colleagues,
Yep.
who's arguably one of the most overworked people,
Yep.
meaning he works easily
Yep.
16 hours a day and often 6 days a week,
Oh.
he says, what do you mean work life balance? I have a fantastic work life balance.
Mm.
I think what he means by that is he works all the time and he's enjoying it.
Yep.
But several people for whom
Yep.
their working day is about 8 hours
Yep.
a day on
Yep.
average, on
Yep.
the other hand, complain considerably about
Yep.
the nature of work.
Yep.
I'm seeing two factors that drive that. One,
Yep.
how
Yep.
much control people perceive over their work, and second, how much people enjoy their work.
Hmm.
Enjoyment is also largely a function of how much control they perceive, but I
Yep.
still want to treat this as
Yep.
a slightly different factor.
Yes.
Now, what have we found? Well, if you are able to increase the amount by
Yep.
which you like your work or
Yep.
increase the degree of control that you have, the
Yep.
same thing becomes more enjoyable. And
Okay.
suddenly, work life balance seems to be much better.
Okay.
So,
So it's about being passionate about your work and enjoying the work.
yes, as an outcome. Having said that,
Yep.
I'm not sure if asking people to be passionate about something makes them passionate about something.
Hmm.
Um, a couple of things help.
Yep.
One is to practice discipline. In the
Yep.
early stages, we don't
Yep.
really understand any subject.
Yep.
And if we are disciplined about it and do it whether we like it or not, we find it easier to cross that initial hurdle of resistance.
Hmm.
When we do, things become easier. When things become easier, we enjoy it more, especially
Yep.
when we start seeing the reward. Somebody pats you on the back and says, "Oh, nice job on that." Then it becomes smooth sailing and we start enjoying it more. So, the
Right.
first implementable advice I'd say is to, uh, in a disciplined way, give it a month and work hard at it,
Okay.
irrespective of whether we enjoy it or not.
Okay.
The second thing is to increase our perceived control over it. For
Okay.
example, when I was working at one of my previous employers, we had to create a 400-page document. Now, a request in response to a request for a proposal. Oh,
Yep.
400-page proposal is a nightmare. No human has ever read it. I know that because I was the last one to put it together in our organization, and I
Yep.
didn't read it.
Yep.
And in our client organization, they had about what 5 days to review 10 proposals. There's no way they could have read it either.
Yes.
So now this is a pretty depressing affair. So what I did to increase my perceived level of control was wrote it in a way that the first letter of each page actually
Yep.
formed a sentence and there was
Okay.
a hidden message in it.
Okay.
Why did I do it? For the
Yep.
sheer, well, basic mind numbing, to avoid that mind numbing boredom. But it was
Yeah.
really to introduce a sense of control over the process.
Yep.
So my second suggestion is find a way by which you take control over even at least a tiny portion of your work. And that can be by enrolling people, that can be by you running an experiment, you trying to learn something by yourself, any which way. And
Yep.
the work starts becoming a whole lot more uh,
Interesting.
yours. Yeah, well, yours, and therefore hopefully interesting.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Sir, I wanted to know your story about Gramener. So why the name Gramener and how what has been the journey so far so that the students who are not aware of Gramener become aware of it.
Mm, Most of the co-founders of Gramener used to work together in the 90s at IBM. That's
Yep.
how we got to
Yep.
know each other. In
Okay.
2010, we
Yep.
decided to exit from our respective jobs and start a company. We were
Okay.
looking at two areas,
Yep.
rural BPO and
Yep.
energy management.
Yep.
So we coined the name Gram plus
Yep.
Ener for energy,
Oh, energy. Okay. Okay. That's how
and that
Gramener.
became Gramener.
Okay.
But
Very nice.
what happened after about a year and a quarter of running around was we realized that energy management requires too large an investment,
Yep.
and rural BPO doesn't have anywhere near enough the returns that we needed to sustain.
Yep.
So while in the process, we were reaching out to several people and sharing what could be done. And they were very excited by the kind of analysis we were doing with the data and
Yep.
the kinds of visual reports we were creating.
Yep.
So we said maybe there's a potential here and made our first pivot, which was to move away from energy management and rural BPO into data visualization to start.
Okay. So, as a student, our university has four campuses, out of which my campus, which is Bangalore campus, has a dual degree program, which
Mhm.
has an MBA plus an MS Analytics at from the State University of Buffalo.
Hmm.
So this is a analytics program. So these students learn a program called Tableau,
Hmm.
and they use some data visualization. Exercises are given to them using Tableau. Is Tableau a relevant software? Is it still a relevant software,
It
or
certainly
are there
is.
any? Yes. Okay.
Oh, sorry, sorry, go on, please.
So are there any other courses or softwares that students can learn to enrich their career in data analytics?
Tableau is an excellent software. Arguably, it is a market leader.
Yeah.
The one other software that's giving it a run for its money and may take over the mantle as market leader or may have taken over the mantle as market leader is Power BI. The
Okay.
two are very similar. Power
Yep.
BI has a smaller learning curve, but Tableau is more structured. Uh, Power BI is developing faster than Tableau. Power BI is owned by Microsoft, Tableau is owned by Salesforce. It's hard to pick one over the other,
Yep.
but between these, you can't go wrong for the next 5 years.
Very good. Very good. Okay. And so another question that I had to just pivot from what you said was that, sir, how has COVID impacted your business model, Gramener's business model?
The bulk of the issue with COVID is the preparation that organizations are doing, anticipating a downfall. It's kind of like the stock market. You
Yep.
expect there to be a downturn, so you plan for it and therefore sell your stocks. Similarly, you
Yep.
expect there to be a downturn and plan for reduction in spends, be it employee or vendor.
Yep.
So our revenue comes from doing work for our clients,
Yep.
which if they reduce their spend gets either delayed or reduced.
Okay.
What we're seeing is that different industries have very different reactions. For
Okay.
example, one of our uh, clients is a semiconductor manufacturer,
Okay.
and this particular set of semiconductor components that they manufacture actually
Yeah.
has been deemed as an essential component, and therefore they're seeing growth in this time.
Okay.
A few of our clients are pharma companies, and
Yep.
while they definitely are also planning for a downturn
Yep.
because some of the drugs in their portfolio may not sell as well,
Yep.
overall they believe that there will be an upturn and there's considerable progress.
Okay.
On the other hand, one of our clients is a media company, a
Yep.
television channel,
Yep.
and they are taking a huge hit
Yep.
because the bulk of the new serials that are
Yep.
coming in have stopped, and the traffic has shifted over towards news or to, well, Ramayana and Doordarshan.
Okay. Okay.
So, first impact is based on the sector, and we are seeing different impacts in different sectors. The
Okay.
second impact that we are seeing is that of reduction in discretionary spend. People
Okay.
aren't very comfortable making large long term decisions at this point, and they're treading far more cautiously. So things are getting delayed. But
Okay.
on the other hand, we find that the initiatives that will help them
Yep.
uh, improve their business post COVID, those initiatives are gaining a lot of traction. So
Okay.
the reality is we are actually having many more conversations these days, just
Yep.
that the nature of conversation has shifted.
Okay.
For most software and most analytics companies, I believe that the impact is not so high
Yep.
because these are infrastructural and fairly fundamental. But
Yep.
if there if the teams were focusing on one, if there is a large team focusing on one particular area,
Yep.
then there would be a certain amount of effort to refocus all of those teams into a different area that is more aligned to business resilience. So, short answer to how is COVID impacting us? We are
Okay.
seeing a shift in the type of business.
Yep.
Volume of business is unknown at the moment because we are getting more and we're getting less, and it's hard to tell which way it's going to swing.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Sir, again, you told about your, to revert back to the second question that I asked. You mentioned the story of Gramener, right? How you evolved from a village BPO or a rural BPO plus an energy consulting company to a data visualization company. How do you identify the current and future business requirements? Are there any frameworks that you use, or is it a best practice that evolved from your work experience at IBM, BCG, and other places?
So we know that every industry has a standard set of uh, issues that exist
Yep,
along their value chain.
yep,
So if you take, for example, a bank, or
yep,
let's specifically take the loans division of a bank.
yep,
The value chain starts with customer acquisition, then it
yep,
goes on to loan processing, then
yep,
it goes on to loan servicing and collections, then
yep,
it gets into delinquency management, and there are
yep,
a variety of support functions.
yes,
So in each of these, there are a standard set of problems that they have when it comes
yep,
to, let's say, customer acquisition. Their big
yep,
problem will be where should I be focusing on? Are
yep,
my teams acquiring customers efficiently, or are some
yep,
teams underperforming compared to the others? When it comes
yep,
to, let's say, loan approvals, question
yep,
would be whom should I give loans to? And
yep,
where am I losing money by not giving loans or losing money by giving too many loans?
yep,
These are examples of problems that can be solved with data. So,
yep.
one starting point is a catalog of typical problems. And
Okay,
when we share that with clients, they get an idea of what can be done.
okay,
The second is a catalog of solutions across industries. When we show clients, here's something that we did for marketing to
yeah,
somebody in the HR space,
yeah,
they are sometimes able to associate it with their set of problems
yeah.
and say, oh, could you do exactly the same thing for me just with my data set?
Mm,
The, and this is the second approach. Show them a catalog of solutions. The first is show them a catalog of solutions in their area.
yep,
Second, show them a catalog of solutions across areas.
yep,
Third is understand their problem areas and craft a custom solution for them. Between these, showcasing what's possible
yep.
and understanding from them where their pain areas are, usually evolve some kind of an answer. To be fair, this is
That's very much okay. Okay, sir. So the next question I have is on the aspect of business acumen.
mhm,
So, what, according to you, is business acumen?
hard to say, but one pretty important aspect, as I'm discovering, is what's called
Yep.
the product market fit. Knowing whether what you
Okay.
have is right
Yep.
for the people that you're going after, not just
Okay.
as is this something that they might buy, but is this a must have for them? And being able to rapidly figure out if we are solving a critical problem for the audience that we have, and either changing what we offer or changing the audience accordingly to
Okay.
figure that out. That I see
Okay.
as one of the critical aspects of business acumen.
Okay. So, how does a student develop such an ability? How can a student develop such that ability? Is it through practice, or is there any kind of specific training or projects that he can do to acquire this?
So, one a good thing about learning is that the principles of learning are fairly consistent across the types of learning. So
Yep.
it's roughly the same way we learn anything else. And
Yep.
within that, among the most powerful principles I've seen is learning at the edge of competence and
Yep.
iterating rapidly to learn from failures. Let me
Okay.
expand on that.
Yep. Yes, please.
If when you're learning something, there
Yep.
has to be a test of whether you've learned this successfully or not. Otherwise,
Okay.
it's hard to tell whether you have actually learned. Oh,
Okay.
exams are one form of a test, but it's pretty easy
Yep.
for us to construct our own tests. In software, you
Yep.
write an application, see if it works. In
Yep.
marketing, you actually create a pitch and ask people for
Yep.
their feedback.
Yep.
But it's ultimately about doing and measuring if you've succeeded or failed.
Yep.
Without that,
Yep.
there is no learning. So, a first principle, therefore, is learn by doing,
Okay.
not just by reading.
Okay.
The second is once you do that, it's learning at the edge of competence, which is if you're succeeding every time, it feels good,
Yep.
but that means
Yep.
that you haven't learned, your pace of learning is slow.
Okay.
If you fail every time, then
Yep.
you have no idea whether any of the things that you're doing are even working. So the
Okay.
ideal failure rate is roughly 50%. Half the times
Okay.
you do something right, half the times you do it wrong. And
Yep.
when you do it right, you learn what works. And when you do it wrong, you learn what doesn't work and try again.
Yep.
So that is a critical element. The third aspect being when you fail, it's important to learn from that failure. And this is a rather difficult thing. It's actually far more pleasing to feel bad about our failures and avoid failures
Yep.
in the first place. But
Yep.
building a mindset where we say, good, now this is the failure is a learning. And therefore, let me make
Yep.
sure that the next time I fail in a different way, not this way,
Yep.
is
Okay.
a critical pillar for moving that forward. So, by
Okay.
doing
Yep.
things and measuring them, by making
Yep.
sure that in our measurements we hit our mark roughly
Yep.
half the time, and
Yep.
when we don't, we learn from it and fail in a different way. That's
Yep.
what to me constitutes learning of any kind. And
Okay.
for something like product market fit, that's exactly how we'd apply it. Think of a product.
Okay.
Now, that could be
Yep.
something for
Yep.
uh, your college friends. It could be
Yep.
helping them understand the stock market. So, can I create a tutorial for it?
Yep.
It could
Yep.
be, or helping them invest for that matter. Or
Yep.
it could be, well, helping them with their exams. So, can I create a cheat sheet for it? Is there a market for it? And
Yep.
what you get in return need not necessarily be monetary. It could be an
Yep.
exchange of favors. How you structure it could be anything.
Yep.
So conceive
Yep.
of a product or a
Yep.
solution or an offering of any kind. Anything that we do
Yep.
could be thought of that way. And
Yep.
conceive a market and see if you can
Yep.
iterate on it.
Okay. Okay. That's a very good advice. Thank you so much. Sir, another question I had was the open data initiatives of the Indian government.
Mhm.
Is our industry aware of these open data initiatives? Are people leveraging this? What is your opinion about that?
Yes, and yes. The bulk of
Yep.
the data that's coming out from the government has come out because
Yep.
of an active thrust. That is, there is
Yep.
a mandate that people should release a certain number of data sets, or there was at least on a
Yep.
periodic basis. So that got a lot of
Yep.
data out in the open. But the reality
Yep.
is that this became a movement right from the time when right to information was introduced.
Yep. Yep.
So a lot of data has become public. Um,
Very good.
Corporates are aware of it. The industry is aware of it. A lot of the data isn't necessarily in a usable form, though. So they are
Okay.
struggling to adapt. A lot of
Okay.
the data is not something that they have the uh, should I say habit of
Yep.
incorporating. So they're struggling. But
Yep.
this is something that's changing at a very rapid pace. For example,
Okay.
we were working with a bank who said,
Yep.
we want to understand where we should be pitching home loans. Now, the
Yep.
census data is publicly available. So part of the work
Yep.
that we were doing was to identify where the penetration of housing loans should be higher versus lower. We were working for a
Okay.
media company. Their question was, say, to play. The programs are very different for North versus South. The North is generally treated as Hindi speaking, and the South is not. But
Yep.
arguably, let's say, uh, place like Hyderabad
Yep.
is closer perhaps to a place like Nizamuddin than
Yep.
uh, some other region in the south. So,
Yep.
can we
Yep.
identify which regions are similar and create the program
Yep.
accordingly using public data? Is another kind of an example of this. The examples abound. What is also happening is that educational institutions are getting into open data because they serve as a base for uh, teaching students and also trying to expose this. So we're working with ISB, for example, to create the
Okay.
India Data Portal, which
Okay.
is like a repository of uh, public data, which
Okay.
supplements data.gov.in but has data in a
Okay.
more usable form, for example.
Okay.
So in
Okay.
such cases, the students also get a better understanding of what can be done with open data. And as they enter the industry, it becomes easier for
Yeah.
them to apply it.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Um, so the next question I have is that what is unique about the data visualization industry? And have you noticed any correlation between your industry and other industries that are interesting?
Mm. The data visualization industry is unusual in that it combines design and analysis, two fields that are generally very far apart. It's
Okay.
hard to find an artist who thinks mathematically, and hard to
Okay.
find an analyst who thinks visually. And
Okay.
where we do, those are the unusual
Yeah.
exceptions. And data visualization is literally a field that combines both of these unusual elements. So that
Okay.
makes it pretty unique.
Pretty unique.
What we're seeing is that there is a considerable spurt on both sides, or an impetus on both sides to data visualization. With the
Yep.
wave of big data that happened, say, from
Yep.
2010 to
Yep.
2015, there was an
Yep.
impetus. But there was
Yep.
and is also a move towards design thinking. And there's
Yep.
two parts to design thinking. The first,
Yep.
of course, is design as a process, but the
Yep.
second is also design as an outcome. And with
Yep.
the impetus on design thinking, data visualization
Yep.
again is getting a lot of traction there. So at least
Okay.
these two areas, there's considerable correlation in terms of how
Okay.
data visualization has been moving.
Oh, very good. Very good. So, sir, what kind of key numbers, metrics, thumb rules, or heuristics do you use to track a holistic macro level view of your industry?
Okay, I'm gonna skip this one. I don't track a
Okay.
macro level view of the industry. I have no idea.
Okay. No problem. No problem. No problem. So the next question I have is about strategic
Hmm.
planning. So students had a lot of doubt as to what happens in a strategic planning. Okay, and how can a student get better at strategic planning? That is one question that came my way. So I'm just posing it to you. Do you do strategic planning as a yearly exercise or a half yearly exercise or a quarterly exercise? So what happens in that meeting?
When I was in college, I
Yep.
had a discussion with my professor of corporate strategy, and it
Yep.
was an interesting discussion. He asked,
Yep.
uh, "How much do you think of what we consider strategy is
Yep.
emergent as opposed to planned?"
Yep. Yep.
What I mean is,
Yep.
let's take our own scenario. We decided to
Yep.
move from
Yep.
energy management and rural BPO into data visualization.
Yep. Yep.
Is that strategic planning? Well, in a way, yes, because we said this is not the area we want to be in, this is the area we want to go into.
Yep.
Was it planned? No, it emerged. So,
Yep.
in retrospect, I could say that
Yep.
this is part of our grand strategic plan.
Yep.
Let's take another example.
Yep.
We moved away from, or we decided at a certain point not to acquire
Yep.
any new logos. We said,
Yep.
from now on, we are only going to work with our existing clients. And
Yes.
that was primarily driven by our rapid growth across accounts, but
Yep.
relatively shallow growth within an account. And we found that it's actually
Yep.
easier to acquire customers where we have already acquired them. And we weren't
Yep.
doing such a good job of retaining them. Uh,
Yep.
This again is a strategy, but
Yep.
was it planned in that a year ago? Did we know that we were going to do it? No. But when we
Mm.
started, it was obviously
Yep.
what we decided we were going to do. So
Okay.
I think a significant portion of strategic planning is
Yep.
being very observant about what's
Yep.
happening in the world around us and then saying,
Okay.
this is the direction that I want to go in. I'm reasonably sure that this is the way to go,
Yep. Okay.
which is what I'd call emergent strategy,
Emergent strategy. Okay.
as opposed to
Okay.
planned
Makes sense.
strategy, where
Yep.
you say, this is how I'm going to go about it, and you stick to it for a very long time. And there's a bit of both as well. Now,
Yep.
where do you do which? Well, where the industry is stable and where the decisions are reasonably stable, a planned strategy makes perfect sense. If
Yep.
you're operating in the cement industry hasn't
Yep.
changed in 100 years. Or, well, I
Yep.
mean, it has changed dramatically, but the principles of
Yep.
operations are
Yep.
fairly well known and well understood.
Yep.
On the other hand, if you're operating in the mobile app space, we barely know the rules, and by the time we learn a
Yep.
set of rules, the rules have changed. So
Yep.
these are in some ways extremes, where in one
Yep.
case you almost always are just observing, reacting, and planning, versus where you're sitting down, thinking, analyzing, and extrapolating from a lot of data in the past. So
Yes.
the common thing about this, though, is you look at what's happened in the past, what's worked, what's not worked. You guess what's going to happen in the future. And based on this, you pick a direction. This is how I'm going to go. But also, as part of that, you consciously keep iterating, saying, are we going in the right direction or not? Uh, a typical strategic planning process for us, if I were to take the example of our annual planning process, starts about a month
Yep.
and a half before the year end, where
Okay.
the founders get together and ask ourselves, we know our vision.
Yep.
What's the best
Yep.
way of getting there?
Okay.
And we talk based on what we've heard in the market. We say, here are a dozen
Okay.
things that we could probably do.
Yep.
That could be, for example, building a new product, building on our
Yep.
existing product, not even going in the product direction, going the pure services route. It could be focusing on upskilling on consulting, analysis,
Yep.
design,
Yep.
technology.
Yep.
Any of these are possible options. And it's not as if we randomly come up with the options, we come up with what we believe are really good options. And among
Okay.
those, ask ourselves the question, based on what we
Yep.
see outside and inside, which of these is the biggest lever?
Hmm.
And those
Okay.
biggest levers, once we have a consensus around it, becomes
Yep.
the becomes the plan for the year.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Arguably, it's probably not too different from how a curriculum gets set for a new course.
I know. I know. I know. Sir, so one last question, which is around any books that you would like to recommend to students. Any book that has inspired you, or you have gifted that book to your employees most. Something that you have read recently, which has triggered a thought in you, which you feel should be shared with the student.
Hmm. Well, let's stick to nonfiction. Um,
Yep.
there's a number of them that I can suggest. Uh, I'd suggest a book called Mastery by George
Yep.
Leonard.
Okay.
And
Mastery. Okay.
that's something that teaches you mastery in any discipline.
Okay.
A more recent book that was pretty good was Never Split the Difference. It
Okay.
is the art of negotiation and convincing.
Okay. Okay.
Um, what would be hmm, another pretty good book is Peopleware by Tom DeMarco, and
Okay.
that's about the well art of of people in the software industry.
Okay. Okay.
All three are
Okay.
excellent.
All three are excellent. Okay. So when you said people, I forgot that I hadn't asked a very important question to you. So what does it take to lead large teams? And how do you manage large teams? Are there any tips or anything that you have learned that can be shared with the students?
Yeah. Same way as you form a large gang in school or college. What does it take?
Okay.
Well, you've got to get people to follow you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do people follow you? Well, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, there's two parts to this. Leading
Yeah.
large teams versus managing large teams. So I'm going to take your question at face value, which is leading large
Yeah.
teams.
Yes. Yes.
So one is primarily about getting people to follow you. Now, people will
Yep.
follow you for two reasons. One,
Yep.
well, actually, only one reason, which manifests in two ways. People will follow
Yep.
you if it benefits them. There are
Yep.
two ways in which it can benefit them. You care
Yep.
for them, or
Yep.
tagging along with you will take them somewhere great.
Yep.
So it's largely about care and vision. You've
Yep.
got to. make sure that you make the people in your team better,
Yep.
and you've got to take them along to some place great.
Yep.
If you know you're going someplace great, good. If
Yep.
not, make sure you figure out where you're going. Basically, craft a vision
Yep.
for what you're doing for the team.
Yep.
Uh, if you don't care enough about people, start caring. It is a practice
Yep.
skill. Ultimately, people
Yes.
really care only for themselves. It's when they
Yep.
start realizing the benefit to them
Yep.
of caring for others
Yep.
that they start caring.
Yep.
So that's perfectly
Yep.
fine. The
Okay.
last thing about this is sustaining it, and that's primarily
Yep.
about execution discipline.
Yep.
I mentioned reliability as one of the most important things for a student to succeed in their career.
Yes.
Execution discipline is about making sure that you have a team that is reliable,
Yep.
instilling the habit in others to be reliable. What is
Yep.
that about? Well, if reliability is about sticking to commitments, execution
Yep.
discipline is about getting other people to give commitments and tracking their
Yep.
commitments and making sure that they live up to it.
Yep.
That's broadly the biggest things that I think it takes to lead a large team.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I really hope our students will definitely benefit out of this our interaction. Um, so thank you so much. Heartfelt thanks.
Pleasure.